You are listening to the Batflip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damian, here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on May 18th of 2022. Got a interesting episode this week. Got some MLB breaking some viewership records, a couple no-hitters, one official, one not, a couple veteran moves that we need to talk about, and then some other injury news type performances that happened over the week. Then at the end, we'll jump to our players of the week like always. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well. Had a pretty good week. My baseball team hasn't been doing especially well, but that's okay. We're recording a day late. Actually, went to a game last night. It was a college game, and so that part of the year is heating up with the college postseason about to go and get underway. That's always fun. I actually live less than a mile from where the SEC baseball tournament is held, which, if you aren't aware, the SEC is the best conference in college baseball. So it's a lot of fun to get a chance to go to a lot of those games and see a bunch of those college players before they get drafted and become superstars. I mean, been able to go out there and see guys like Aaron Nola, Dallas Keuchel played in that tournament. All these top level, Alex Bregman. I remember watching him. I remember watching Mike Yastrzemski play there. All these guys, getting a shot to play in Hoover, and before going into the pro ball and becoming big league stars. So it's always a lot of fun. I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, had a pretty good week and ready to talk about a little bit of baseball.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and jump right in. And it's actually something I just saw today, which I thought it was really interesting. And that it was that MLB is breaking the viewership record on its streaming site, MLB.TV, this year. So far, over the first 40 days of the season, 2.8 billion minutes of game action has been watched in the first 40 days, which is a 9% increase over the same period as last year. With nine most watched days out of the top 10 in the history of the platform coming this year. And if you look at some of the other stuff, one factor of that is also that they're bringing the Big Inning channel back, and it's got a big jump in itself by a 653% jump in the minutes watched there. Adding some pregame, postgame shows as well. And then as far as their YouTube content, they're really stepping that game up as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Obviously, anytime you have a ratings increase, that's good news for the sport and everything. I do wonder a little bit on the MLB.TV ratings. A lot of people cutting cords. How much of that is new fans, and how much of it is people who are just cut the cord? But the good news is that it does still bode really well for baseball, because those people cutting the cord they don't want to lose their baseball. They want to keep watching. So that 9% increase, that's still really good news. The 53% increase on YouTube is great too, because I think that a lot of times your content that comes out of YouTube helps grow with a younger demographic of fans. People, kids on YouTube, they just watch sports highlights and stuff. When baseball becomes a big part of that, it makes them want to tune in and watch games on a daily basis, which is a really big thing, and really good news. I think there's a lot of you go around at other sports, and I think it's led to a lot of the increased popularity of, especially of the NBA, has been through a lot of the YouTube and people talking about the NBA on YouTube. And I know that the content that you're talking about with the, just the MLB channel, that's been part of it too. But, a lot of it being, Major League Baseball content creators on YouTube has helped a lot. And will continue to help if that continues to grow. So definitely pretty cool stuff there. Very good news for baseball. Um, you know, I think that it's encouraging to see. There's still a lot of issues with MLB TV, a lot of blackout issues that are really, really frustrating for a lot of fans. Luckily I have I have a subscription to a local to the to DirecTV, so I don't have to deal with the blackout when I watch the Braves. I can watch them on the sign into my provider on the apps, but for a lot of people who that's their only source of watching baseball, that's really frustrating to them. But But yeah, it's definitely a good good ratings increase. That's always that's never a negative. It's always a positive. So good for the sport and good for baseball of bringing making that platform, even though there's still a lot of issues with it, making it better to the point to where you can have you have a lot of people interested in watching it, especially with like you mentioned with that big inning channel.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing I was kind of hoping to see this year. We made a big talk about MLB couldn't lose the momentum that they gained off of last season, and I think this just kind of backs up like they had a ton of momentum, and we're seeing that so far through these numbers. Now it could be the cord cutting base as well. That helps bring these up, but I think overall it's a general good sign for the game.
Yep.
And some of the blackout issues, you can work around it if you have a VPN, which most people are getting VPNs nowadays just for general purposes of online use. So, I use a VPN basically on my computer so I can turn around and watch the Dodger game on MLB TV anyways. So it's pretty simple to use that way.
Yeah, I do want to mention one thing about the what baseball's done. I'm really, really, really frustrated with them and their agreement that they made with Peacock and their agreement they made with Apple Plus TV. I really, really don't like them having national games take that have exclusive national games that they take off of the local team's market and put behind a paywall, especially when it's a team that's only going to be playing on there one time. Like, if the Braves on Sunday played a 11:30 a.m. local time, which my time is 10:30 a.m. game on Peacock, and it was behind a paywall. So unless I wanted to pay $10 or whatever a month, obviously there's ways you can get around that by opening up a account, canceling before your free trial's over or whatever. But still, I mean that I think that's really frustrating that they're going to lock games behind paywalls that for teams and that who have no option to watch it in their local market. Because I mean, I couldn't care less about any other Peacock stuff. So same goes for Apple TV Plus. Right now it's free, but I believe that they're supposed to start charging for that as well. And making those exclusives and taking that out of. I mean, that's just directly taking it out of people's living rooms. That's directly taking it off out of people's typical streams like MLB TV. So that I think that's a really really poor decision by MLB. I figured we don't talk about we're talking about some of the media stuff, but definitely something to look forward to going forward. There's a lot of improvements that could be made, and I think that those improvements could really help grow ratings and grow the sport too. There's a lot of things that could be done, but definitely very encouraged by some of the ratings bumps and just general interest increase. I've had people asking me about baseball that don't typically ask me about baseball this year, so that's always a good sign when that happens.
It very much is. And let's just go ahead and jump on to our next topic. And that's with one of the two like no hitters in quotation marks, one of them not being official. But the first one that was Reed Detmers. Actually happened Tuesday as we were recording this. I think I got done, watched the ninth inning, I believe. He threw a no hitter against Tampa. Only 2 strikeouts, 1 walk on 108 pitches. Really just a real contact based game that didn't have much really to it.
Yeah, Reed Detmers is a guy that I think coming into the year, I was a little bit high on him. I felt like he was a guy that hadn't been talked about enough as a breakout candidate for a young pitcher who was, top prospect as of a year ago. But he's having a pretty good year so far. He's not breaking out to the level that I was kind of hoping he would break out to. A 4.15 ERA, a 4.61 FIP. It's not that great. He's not striking guys out, which is a little bit frustrating for a guy who in the minor league struck a ton of guys out. But I definitely really like Reed Detmers, and that no hitter was something special for him. Being able to throw the first complete game no hitter of the year. We did have a combine from the Mets a few weeks ago, but he threw a real no hitter, and that was really fun to watch. And it kind of goes, the Angels kind of seem to be rolling right now. I mean, they just keep having things happen with them that are like Reed Detmers throwing a no hitter and. That same game was wild. I think Trout homered twice. Trout and Otani went back to back. I think was one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that happened in that game. And then they had the Rendon hit a home run left-handed off a position player, which is pretty crazy. That almost overshadowed people talking about that. Almost overshadowed the no hitter was the left-handed home run from Rendon, who hasn't hit left-handed as a pro. I'm sure he switch hit at some point in his past, but that was pretty crazy too. But definitely a really good thing for LA, the Angels, and that like I say, the Angels are pitching really well. Patrick Sandoval's pitched well. Shohei Ohtani's pitched really well. Noah Syndergaard has pitched well for the most part. He had a bad outing this week, but um, you know, uh, even Michael Lorenzen has a 3.57 ERA, not too bad. And Reed Detmers just kind of adds to that. He's been pretty solid. So definitely some, that was kind of been their downfall for a while. Has been the pitching, and so far this year it's been pretty good. So, if that continues, look out for the Angels. Of course, they already have one of the better records in the game, but they've been pretty good on the mound so far, and that's been good for them.
Yeah, you mentioned that whole Rendon at bat almost taken away from the no hitter. I think my favorite part of that is when he went up to go bat lefty, he had his shin guard still on his left leg.
Yeah,
So shin guard was on his back leg as he was doing it, and then he hits like a one that almost hits it to for a homer, which was pretty wild. But you mentioned a lot of people were high on Detmers coming into this year. He wasn't basically to the level that most people are thinking, but also he's still pretty young. He's only 22, I believe. Just his second real year getting major league time, so probably more will come. But I mean, it was cool to see the flashes of what he could be, even if it wasn't a high strikeout, which I think most people expect him to be a higher strikeout guy. Um, but overall, it was pretty good to see, and against an offense in Tampa that usually finds a way to get hits and get on base a lot. And if you're only talking about one walk here, and obviously no hits, like that's a pretty well pitched game against an offense that can be potent at times. So really good to see. But we'll jump over to our next one, and this is a in quotation marks no hitter, and that's because it's not technically official. Because the Reds were in Pittsburgh this weekend, threw a no hitter started by Hunter Green, and ended up losing the game because after Hunter Green came out, I believe he walked the first one or the second one. Anyways, they ended up walking the bases loaded against the Pirates. There was a ground ball, and Cabrian Hayes beat out the double play, and the Pirates scored their run that way. And it was a 1-0 game. The Reds technically threw a no hitter, but didn't pitch in the ninth, so it's not official. And ended up losing the game 1-0.
yeah, I had a few thoughts about this. The first thing is it's hard to call a game. I mean, technically, yeah. I mean, well, technically this one wasn't because of the 8 innings, but I mean,
Right.
technically, that would be if it would have been a 9 inning full complete game, it would have been a no hitter. But I mean, it's hard to call games where even though it is a no hitter, I mean, when you walk five, six, seven guys in a game, I mean, there's tons of games that have 4 or 5 runs scored. You have 4 or 5 hits and are much better pitched games than that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Hunter Green pitched extremely well in this game. He should not have been back out there. He was well over 100 pitches. A guy who's struggled with injuries in the past. It's not like he was throwing a perfect game. He had already had like 3 walks going into that 8th inning. He wasn't going to be able to finish the game. He was over 100 pitches before the inning, which is I thought that was kind of bad to send him back out there. I mean, I will crucify anybody who who will pull a guy in a perfect game. I'll be if he's got one walk and there's a legitimate shot he could get through it. Like if he's pitched 8 innings or something, 100%. I think he should go back out there. But I mean, he's finished 7 innings. He's got 3 walks. He's over 100 pitches. There's no reason to send a guy who's had injury issues back out there. And then of course, when you send guys out there and they walk guys, I mean, you could score runs without getting hits. I think it should be known, especially in today's game where there's tons of guys. There's a lot of pitchers that are struggling with command, and you know, walked a bunch of guys, and it happened. I mean, obviously, it's hard to score more than 1 or 2 runs without getting hit. So, you look at you look at the fact that the Reds didn't score any runs. Is obviously, you know, they probably would have won with the no hitter. But anyways, it's just kind of, you know, I don't know. It's just really rough. I think that has happened before.
Yeah.
I think the Dodgers and the Angels was the last one in like 2008. Was that? I think that was Irvin Santana through that one, but
I don't know if it was
and that
Santana
might
or
have
if it
been
was
a
Weaver.
I don't know. That might have been a legitimate no hitter because I think they might have pitched the full 9 innings, which is I do believe that if even if they lose, it's still considered a no hitter in the record books
Right.
as long as you're the home team and you pitched 9 innings.
Correct, because
So
it did happen in Anaheim.
yeah, so
So
that would have been a no hitter, but yeah, this was a that's a rough way to lose a game, obviously, and get allowed no hits and lose. I mean,
it's the most Reds way to lose a game this
yeah,
year. Like, isn't it? Like, really, how bad the Reds have been this year. This is just like the icing on the cake. Like, to even say like you can lose a game while not even giving up a hit. That's how bad you are this year. Like,
yeah.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah,
Um,
of course. I don't. I'm gonna disagree with that, and the only reason is because the most Reds' way to lose this year is to give up a ton of hits and give up a ton of runs and not get any hits and lose. So, that's the Reds' way to
that
lose. This is
that's fair.
yeah. This they don't even do anything close to fun. So,
Yeah.
but anyways,
Uh, So next thing we wanted to jump to is just a couple little small things. We had mentioned Chris Paddock had got injured last week, and we didn't know the severity of it quite yet. It was confirmed, and he actually did have Tommy John surgery today, so he's out through the rest of the season and most likely most of next season. And then another thing that happened was we talked about Robinson Cano getting DFA'd from the Mets. He has actually ended up signing a 1-year deal with the San Diego Padres, and 1-year MLB deal with the Padres, and is on their active roster now.
yeah, with Robinson Cano, well, first off with Paddock was actually pitching pretty well for the Twins. So I know we mentioned it a little bit last week, but it's worth mentioning that is a big loss for the Twins, and that makes that trade look really, really bad on their side because, I thought that it was a good trade for them bringing in a guy who with some control who could possibly figure it out as a starting pitcher for 1 year of a closer. But that closer has looked pretty elite so far that they gave up, and Paddock now sounds like it's probably not going to pitch in 2023. It sounds like 2024 will be the next time he pitches at the big league level. And for a guy who has not fully figured it out for a season at the big league level, it's hard to imagine him really becoming what you were hoping he would become at this point. So there were still some believers in him before this year, and he was showing some promise. But man, he that's gonna be that's really a tough break for him. But Robinson Cano, obviously, he's not very good anymore. He looks cooked at the plate. Um, he's not really capable of playing an infield spot anymore. He's already been worth minus point 0.5 WAR this year. So that's really tough. Um, he made an error in the Braves series against the Padres that cost them a game. That didn't help his cause. So I really don't understand fully why San Diego went after him, but I guess they just needed somebody to fill up at bats. I don't know. Maybe he's still a lefty bat off the bench that has a lot of experience, but I think Robinson Cano will probably be done after this year. I doubt he ends up anywhere next year. So definitely not a very good, not a very good start for him in San Diego, and he was atrocious with the Mets. So um, I think he's done. So
Yeah, it's basically just a dart throw by the Padres at this point. I mean, there's probably even the chance that he doesn't even make it through the year.
yeah,
Once they get Tatis back, which they're hoping by the end of June, is when he's able to be back. They'll just have way too many people on the infield. Even if they do look at making Tatis an outfielder this year, it's just there's no room there once you have Cronenworth, Kim, Voigt, Hosmer, Machado. Like, you have too many guys. So I think it's just a get me over now. If you strike pay dirt with him and he shows anything, then maybe you're able to flip him later. But it was just shot in the dark type thing. Paddock, it really does suck. I was one that wasn't as high on him as most other people were, but he was having a pretty good season, as far as his standards were, and being laid over there, getting new pitching coach, and just learning the way they were going about it. So it does suck to see that, and I never wish injuries on anybody. But let's go ahead and jump on to the next topic we have, and it's another unfortunate side of the record books, if you want to say that. But Nathan Eovaldi yesterday tied in a record with, I believe it was Chase Anderson and Michael Blazek. Anderson being in 2020, Blazek being in 2017, by allowing 5 homers in one inning. He ended up going, I think, 1 2/3, 39 pitches, gave up like 9 runs, 6 earned runs, no strikeouts, but 5 homers in one inning it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, Nathan Evaldi's a guy that this kind of summarizes him. He and obviously he doesn't always give up a lot of home runs, but he's a guy who he is the most attacking pitcher out there. He does not walk people. He throws a lot of strikes, and if you're around the strike zone, you're going to occasionally have a day where maybe your fastball doesn't have the same kind of run on it, maybe the splitter doesn't have the same movement as it usually does, and you're going to get hit some. And they facing a really good offense. I mean, the Astros just hit him. I mean, he's not gonna give up a home run and get scared to throw strikes and walk a bunch of guys. He's just gonna keep throwing strikes, and if you're hitting him, you're hitting him, and that's what happened in this game. And I saw somewhere that he had never, or that this was like the first time in like 15 years somebody had given up 5 home runs, or it was someone had given up, started a game with a certain amount of pitches or something without getting a strikeout and giving up like 5 runs or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty remarkable. Or it was five home runs in a game without getting a strikeout. And I mean, I've never heard of 5 home runs in an inning. I mean, that's pretty bad. So, it's just kind of Nate Eovaldi. Every once in a while is going to have that kind of outing where he just maybe not a 5 home run in one inning outing, but he's going to have a couple outings where he gets hit around just because he's not quite, maybe the stuff isn't quite as good as it usually is, and he's never going to throw balls. He's always going to throw strikes. So but he'll bounce back. He's a veteran pitcher. His peripherals look really good this year so far at 333 xFIP. Obviously, his FIP is really high because of the home runs in that one game, but his home run per fly ball ratio skyrocketed, and that'll even out. That'll regress back to the mean. But his xFIP is really good. His expected numbers are good, so he'll be fine. I mean, the Red Sox defense isn't going to help him very much behind him, but definitely, definitely a guy who every now and then one of these kind of outings happens, even for a really really good pitcher like Nate Eovaldi. So you hate it for him, but it's part of the game. So
Yeah, it's one of those where, like you mentioned, with strike throwing guys, this tends to happen. Um, the guys who usually limit most of the damage when they're not on are guys who are more type of living on the corners type people and movement based guys where Evaldi does have some movement, but he just pounds the strike zone. Everything he throws, even the 39 pitches that he had in this game, 31 of them were strikes. So only 8 missed pitches. For 39 pitches, that's usually a pretty good sign. So he just got hit around, but it's going to happen. But talking about the one bad defensive team to another bad defensive team that's going to make it even worse, we're going to jump to the Philadelphia Phillies and them getting hit with Bryce Harper having a partial tear in his UCL, which for most of you that don't know, UCL is the ligament that most people have to get Tommy John surgery to repair. So he is shut down from throwing, won't be re-examined for at least 6 weeks, then would have some sort of a throwing program after that. I guess the Phillies are lucky that the DH did come into play to the NL this year because Bryce Harper will be able to play through it as long as he can manage the pain of that and be a DH at that point. But it will really hurt the defense because Nick Castellanos is having to become the full-time right fielder now. But on the other side of Harper being the DH, it hasn't really slowed him down. I witnessed it firsthand with him playing LA this weekend, and it was a 4-game series. He didn't play on Sunday, but through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, he was like 8 for 12 with 3 homers, 4 doubles, like 10 or 12 RBIs. He's hitting the ball and locked in just as good as ever, but it does suck that he's dealing with this, and you're probably going to lose some games with him having to manage that pain and then not be able to be out there in right field, where he's definitely an upgrade over Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, this is really unfortunate for the Phillies. Obviously, Harper being able to play is still as a DH is good for them, but um, you know, Harper's already he's just an okay out right fielder. He's not horrible out there, but he's not great. But this is really it really hurts to have one of your. I mean, really, Harper's he's probably their best defensive outfielder, even though he's not very good out there. And now you're in a situation where you have both Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber playing the outfield every day, who neither one of them should be playing the outfield at all. And then you're going to have that along with an infield that has Alec Boehm most of the time at third base and Reese Hoskins at first base and Didi Gregorius at shortstop. And it's not like your center field situation is that great with Odubel Herrera being the primary guy there. Him or Roman Quinn's not bad, as a defender, but still, it's really that made a poor defensive outfield and team even worse. And it sucks for Harper, especially when his arm is really the only quality part of his outfield play. His positioning's not that great. His first step's not great. He's not super fast. He's not slow, but he doesn't have a ton of range out there. He's just decent out there. His arm's really what's his value in the field is helps him, and his arm, obviously is going to be a problem. Hopefully it's not a huge problem long term. Hopefully, they can kind of repair it with the rest and rehab and stuff. But you know, it's a big blow for the Phillies to lose. Not necessarily. It could be worse because obviously, it could have been last year and where he goes on the IL for 5 weeks, but or 2 months or 3 months or whatever. But it really does suck to lose one of your only defenders who's adequate. So uh, definitely hurts the Phillies. Obviously, he's still going to hit though. I mean, he's still Bryce Harper. So when he's DHing, he's gonna hit the ball well. He had a great, like you said, he had a great series against the Dodgers this weekend. The Phillies took 3 out of 4 in that series, and really should have taken 4 out of 4 if it wasn't for the outfield being subpar in Sunday's game where they looked like a little bit of a circus out there to me watching it, but they probably would have won all 4. But this was it's tough for the Phillies, but it's not going to completely kill them since he's still able to play.
Yeah, just mentioning that series was insane, at least through Thursday through Saturday. The two Thursday and Friday nights games were they felt like playoff games throughout. It was 12-10 on Friday night, went into extras into the 10th inning. The Phillies scored 3 in the top. The Dodgers had a chance in the bottom of the 10th, and it was some Trey Turner thing. I don't remember exactly what happened. And then on Friday it was 7-7 going into the 9th. The Dodgers had scored 4 in the bottom of the 8th to tie it at 7-7. Go to the top of the 9th, the Phillies score 2, take the lead. Bottom of the 9th, the Dodgers have a chance, don't score anything. I think they even had the bases loaded at one point with 1 out, didn't score anything. So it was a real playoff type feel to the series, which was really fun to watch. And 2 teams that we could see make a deep playoff run, but was pretty enjoyable of a series to watch. But yeah, the loss of Harper, it's gonna be, at least in the field. You mentioned his arm, that is his main thing out there, and it watching them play, it wasn't as awful as I expected it to be. I think that if they positioned better, it would be a lot easier. Like they were playing this weekend, and they had Castellanos kind of swung over towards the gap against Bellinger, who is pulling the ball more than ever right now. And then he hits like a triple down the line because they have him playing over towards the gap, where you could just prevent that, and he probably gets double if you just play him normal. So the positioning needs to get better if they want to help the defensive side of the ball there, especially in the outfield, with the loss of Harper, because Harper probably keeps that to a double anyways with his arm. So you just got to work on that. But that's pretty much what we have for the main part of the show. So if we're going to jump over to our players of the week, and who do you have for your offensive player this week?
So my offensive player this week is actually a guy who honestly probably could have been a few times already, but I don't think we've picked him yet. But he's definitely one of the front runners for all the awards right now, and that would be Aaron Judge. Um, Aaron Judge has been really good this year. This was probably his best week yet. Hit 435 this week with a 500 on base and a 1,000 slugging percentage, 319 WRC plus. That's in 6 games. He hit 4 home runs, which led the majors this week, or tied for the lead with Jordan Alvarez. He always plays great defense in the outfield. Uh, he just had a phenomenal week. His plate discipline numbers were really good um, you know, which has kind of been a key for him this year and last year is that his strikeouts have been down over the last couple of years from where they were at for his first 2 or 3 years when he really broke out. Aaron Judge has looked extremely good this year. He looks like a guy who is determined after turning down that contract offer from the Yankees to prove himself right. And this is a guy that he could be in that MVP conversation all the way through the end of the season. I mean, he he's definitely showing something so far this year at the plate. It's been impressive to watch so far.
Yeah, he's been pretty locked in so far to start this year. I think this is probably the best we've ever seen Aaron Judge. I mean, I know he's had the couple seasons where he hit, or the one season where he hit like over 50 homers or close to it. Um, but I think this is probably the best Judge we've seen, and that's a scary thought if he keeps doing what he's doing right now. But for my hitter this week, I ended up going with a guy by the name of Brendan Donovan from the St. Louis Cardinals. He's an infielder. We had mentioned a little bit last week. We didn't know where they were going to go with optioning Paul DeYoung and with Edmundo Sosa not getting as much run or just coming back off the injured list. And Brendan Donovan was a guy that was kind of help filling in that gap. And in 7 games this week, he hit 467, a 667 on base, and a 733 slugging percentage. Didn't have any homers, but those came from mostly doubles, 6 runs, 3 RBIs, a stolen base. The thing that really jumped out to me is just this week alone had a 37.5% walk rate. So just an incredible eye. And I knew I know last week I had said I didn't know where they were really going to go. Well, Brendan Donovan just showed me where they were kind of going to go this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, he was very good. He had obviously that's a really really solid week. You mentioned Edmundo Sosa. Edmundo Sosa was played tonight. Looked like he might have gotten hurt again, so he slid into second. I don't know if he stayed in the game, but he had to walk off with a trainer after he was thrown out at second. So I don't know if he stayed in the game, but
Hey,
um,
I just remembered. Also, speaking on the Cardinals, I don't know how I didn't remember this. Albert Pujols pitched this week.
and he stole a base today.
I think he stole a base, but he pitched.
He's Shohei.
He's Shohei Ohtani, but his first pitching appearance in 22 years or something like that. It was pretty funny watching his expressions to giving up home runs and then him
Yeah.
saying, "So this is what it felt like all these years of me terrorizing people for 22 seasons, giving up homers."
Yeah,
Uh,
and another thing with him too is that it should have been a scoreless outing, but the second baseman that was in the game, I don't think it was. I don't remember who the second baseman was at that time. There were so many players getting subbed in and out for him. Botched a double play ball that would have ended
mm-hmm.
the inning. So, um, ended the game. But then he gave up some runs. But it was still a lot of fun. I was watching that and that was also the Sunday night baseball game, so it
Yeah.
had a national audience, and that was a really boring game because the Cardinals just absolutely rocked Carlos Rodon in the first couple innings, which was shocking. But then, of course, at the end they had Albert Pujols pitching was definitely fun to watch. But yeah, that was one of the more entertaining things we've seen this year, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah,
when I saw the Cardinals right now, I don't know why it just popped into my head, and I'm
yeah,
like, how
I
did I
can't believe we
forget
didn't.
that moment?
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't talk about that
Um,
already.
so going from one Hall of Fame pitcher now to another Hall of Fame pitcher, um, that was a really bad segue. Actually, not a Hall of Fame pitcher.
Well,
Um,
he is.
well,
He's a pitcher. technically because he pitched, and he's going to probably be in the Hall of Fame. So
Yeah, I guess technically. So, who is your pitcher this week?
well, he's not a Hall of Famer, but
I
he's
know
also a rookie, and
that's what I was saying. My bad segue there.
yeah, he could be a Hall of Famer because he's a rookie and he looks pretty
Could
dang
be.
good. But Shane McClanahan was my guy this week. 14 innings pitched. That's 2 starts. He only gave up 1 run in 2 starts. He he looks really good. He's looked good all season. 11.5 strikeouts per nine this week. 0.64 walks per nine. Not walking a lot of guys. He gave up 1 home run solo shot. Um, but this guy looks like the real deal right now. 8 starts this year so far. A 2.33 ERA. His peripherals back that up. In fact, he has a 185 xFIP, which is insanely good. Um, basically meaning that the projection, the xFIP expected stats believe that he has been very unlucky to have a 2.33 ERA. But he gets the ball on the ground at a 56% rate, and that goes along with extremely high strikeouts, extremely low walks so far. I don't, I would expect him to walk a few more guys than he is right now, and I expect him to not strike out quite as many as he is right now. But man, this guy's good. His velocity's up, which is kind of hard to believe for a guy that was averaging 97 or 96.7 last year on his fastball velocity. Well, now it's 97.4. I mean, he's just preposterous. I mean, he has a chance to be. Nobody's talking about this guy, but man, he looks to me like a potential superstar. And you add him and one of the best young pitchers in the game to Wander Franco, who's one of the best young position players in the game. And man, the Rays just keep figuring out how to get value out of these guys and getting these prospects up. And I mean, this is just it's crazy what they do. But definitely Shane McClanahan is looking good right now, and he had a great week. So I picked him.
Yeah, what really stands out from watching some of McClanahan's game, it's obviously the velocity, but it's the movement he has on some of his pitches. Like, I don't know if it's a straight two seam or if it's a sinker he throws, but the break that has breaking into lefties and away from righties is disgusting. And then to pair that up with it's a slider or a slurve or whatever that pitch is either. Like, to have those two that break so far the opposite way but come out of the same tunnel. That's disgusting, especially with his velocity and being from a left-handed side. So he has been pretty fun to watch, and I've really enjoyed seeing him take that little step forward this year after he got got in there last year, was pretty good, but taking that next step forward this year has been pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, you mentioned the fastball. The fastball is actually it's technically according to the metrics, the pitch info stuff. It's actually a four seamer that he throws. It's just got a lot of movement on it. So
There's no
um,
shot.
yeah, it's showing that he throws four seamer. One of the things that this year his changeup percentage is gone. He's throwing changeup 11% higher of the time that he did last year. Last year he threw 8% changeups. This year 19%. So he's also throwing a lot more curveballs and relying a lot less on the slider. That might be one of those kind of slurve curveball type things that you mentioned.
Yeah,
But yeah, he actually was throwing his changeup's a split finger, but he's actually not throwing. He's actually throwing four seamers according to the Statcast stuff. So sometimes it can be a little bit, he throws a little bit. It's not sidearm, but he's, kind of low three quarters. Sometimes that backspin on the ball to get that fastball does make it run kind of like a two seamer if you're throwing like three quarters. So maybe that helps that. Um, but man,
that is
Shane McClanahan looks good.
that is pretty interesting. I thought he'd throw a two seamer, but it could be like Kenley. Kenley Jansen throws a cutter with a four seam grip as well. So just the way it comes off his hand. So it could be something like that. But I could have swore it was like a two seam or hard sink or something. But that's
Well,
pretty
it
interesting.
might,
It's
and
four
it, and
seam.
it might be it just the way the spin
They
is on it.
track it.
They
Yeah,
track it as a four seamer because of the spin
yeah,
on it. So
that's true.
um,
So my pitcher this week is a guy by the name of Zach Lug or Laug. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. But he's from the Oakland A's. He was actually a part of the Matt Chapman trade from Toronto to Oakland this year. He had 2 starts this week. One against Minnesota was 4 1/3 innings, gave up 2 runs. 2 strikeouts, 2 walks, but had 7 shutout innings against Detroit with 6 strikeouts as well, no walks, 5 hits in each game. He just had an overall really good week, and the really reason I really wanted to mention him is because they actually ended up optioning him today as well. So he had a really good week, and then part of that trade package from the Chapman trade then got optioned, because I think their Cole Irvin's supposed to be back within the next couple days. But Zach Logue or Laug or however you say it, that's my pitcher this week.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice story for him, being able to pitch 17 innings at the big league level, and getting a kind of a cup of coffee in the big leagues. And he was actually really struggling at AAA before he came up, and had a couple of really nice outings. So that's solid. The A's have had some success with this type of guy. Doesn't throw very hard, but he's got a really good changeup, and they've had some success with these types of guys. His command is pretty decent for the most part. Hadn't been at AAA, but in the past it's been really good. In fact, last year in Toronto, under 2 walks per 9, across 2 levels, which was really solid. But that's nice. And to be honest, the Matt Chapman trade's looking pretty bad for the Blue Jays right now, because Matt Chapman has been defensively he's been solid, but offensively he's been pretty rough. A 183 average is pretty bad. Um, a lot of that has been BABIP luck, though, as he's a 205 BABIP. But looking at some of the his strikeouts pile up on Matt Chapman pretty quick, and he needs to be hitting a lot more power, and because he also kind of pops it up a lot, doesn't have a great batted ball profile to hit for a high average. So he's hitting for a very low average. It's bringing his whole line down, and maybe he'll figure it out. Small sample size still, a lot of season left to go, but definitely a really solid a solid start for a guy that the A's traded one of their top players from the past 3 or 4 years, and um, they're getting some early returns that are encouraging from one of them, lefty. So, I think they're kind of sitting a guy down that's real similar to the guy they're bringing up. So,
Yeah, just looking at mentioning the whole Matt Chapman thing, he is hitting the ball pretty hard this year. He's in
yeah,
the top 6% in hard hit rate and top 11% in average exit velocity. So I do think there will be some pretty good you know progression back towards his way. But he has looked really bad so far to start this year. But getting some early returns, like the A's trying to just figure out what they got right now and that. So, but we'll wrap it up for the Players of the Week segment. Any final thoughts you want to wrap up on the episode?
not all that much. We've had well over a month into the season now, and you're starting to see some guys, definitely some of that small sample size starting to go away a little bit. There's some guys that are having breakout performances that you're starting to see really kind of cement themselves as breakout players. Guys like Taylor Ward, Ty France, if he kind of broke out last year, but being at the level he's at this year has been really good. It's been really, really, really fun to watch the resurgence of Mike Trout after some injury issues the last couple of years. Hopefully he stays healthy the rest of the year. But man, we were just talking about him earlier before the show, and he's hit a home run again tonight. He's just been on a tear so far, which is really fun to see for a guy who, like I say, has dealt with the injury issues the last couple of years, and feel robbed, of him, being healthy throughout his prime. But you know, we'll see what happens. We've got about a month before, really start to get into all-star talk. And, I think teams really need to kind of make a move now. If you had a bad start, I think you really need to get on that win streak, kind of get back to being a contender right now. If you've had a really, really good start, this is not the time to let up. I think you're about to separate who's kind of the real contenders and who's kind of the teams that are kind of, I won't say fake, but aren't quite as good as they've looked. Like, are the Mets and the Angels really as good as they've played so far? Are they going to continue to play the way that they played so far? Are teams like like the Braves, or maybe like maybe the White Sox, teams like that who are expected to be division division favorites and World Series contenders, are they going to continue to play poorly? That's going to be, I think that's something you'll probably see in the next few weeks if those teams are able to bring it on or not. And it's an important time because, I mean, like I said, you cannot get too far behind right now in May, because if you get down, 7, 8, 9 games, it's hard to make up. Everyone's situation's different, but it's hard to make up a big deficit. And, you build that cushion and you can afford to have some things happen, like if the Mets lose another pitcher, like say Scherzer has to miss a few starts at some point. He's up there in years. If they build a big enough lead, that's not going to matter. Say Trout, he's had snagging injuries in the past. Say Trout needs to miss a week or two. If the Angels are able to build a pretty big lead, that won't matter quite as much. So, I mean, it'll matter, but it won't be the end of the world for them if they have a big lead. So, definitely looking forward to seeing what the next few weeks brings, and exciting time. So,
Yeah, what I really wanted to wrap up the show on is something that I've been noticing about the last week or so, and I think that it's starting to see the resurgence of the offense. And I don't know if it's because it's getting warmer, so balls are carrying a little bit more. If we're getting maybe more juiced balls back into the league, or also I know I've seen Cedric Mullins said it. Trey Turner, Chris Taylor were talking about it, and another, who's the other guy I saw talking about it. They're mentioning more about trying to focus instead of the launch angle on trying to get backspin on the ball to help the ball carry farther now. And some of those you're seeing, the ones that people expected to go to the warning track, or expected to be homers that were going to the warning track, or maybe carrying it out now because you're seeing the backspin to it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to progress. We said that it was the pitchers having the non-juiced balls as much. Kind of early on in the year, you weren't seeing the power surges as much, but now I think over the last week you've seen multiple games that have had high scoring games. I mentioned 2 of the Dodgers ones. The Cardinals scored a bunch. I believe there was a game today where a team scored 14. So you're starting to see that offensive surge. Is that because of the ball? Are we getting back to the other ball from last year, the past couple years? Are hitters trying to figure out, or starting to figure out, because the spin and the way to hit it? Or is that just natural because of it's getting hotter and the ball usually carries in the heat more than anything? So I think that's one interesting part to watch, especially over these next few weeks as we start getting into the early summer months, late spring, early summer, about how that progresses and where we see that going forward.
yeah, and that's really interesting. Just to kind of piggyback on that, I think it's probably a combination of all that. But I will say that I think a lot of the uppercut swings you've started to see, even more and more so uppercuts. If you hit up on the ball like that, it's going to put less or less backspin. It doesn't necessarily put topspin, but it puts less backspin on the ball if you're swinging up onto the ball. Um, and I don't know if that has a lot to do with it or not, but some of these guys really focusing so hard on launch angle, they might be hurting themselves by putting up a stat cast that says, "Oh, he hit it at 105 miles per hour at a 30-degree launch angle. It should be a home run." But you're swinging up on the ball, hitting it up on it, and put topspin on it. That's going to cause it to not carry as far. And it seems to me like so far the problem hadn't been necessarily that the ball's not juiced or juiced differently or whatever. It's the fact that the seams are different. The ball doesn't carry. It's that humidor thing. It seems to be what's kind of changed things to me. And if the ball's going to carry a lot more if you put backspin on it. So definitely interesting. And I had not seen that there were a lot of players talking about the backspin thing. But that's really interesting to think about. Maybe we'll see more of that going forward. So
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the new emphasis thing we see, is trying to find more backspin in it. Because like I said, I saw Mullins talk about it, and then specifically multiple times this week, Chris Taylor and Trey Turner talked about it as well. So was pretty interesting, and definitely something to watch moving forward. But that's going to wrap up this episode of the Batflip Podcast. Thanks you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
thanks everybody.